Welcome and thank you for coming this evening. Children of Jewish Holocaust Survivors has been honored to be able to host many dignitaries from Israel. It provides the American community an opportunity to hear these officials, to ask questions, and to express their concerns about the Jewish state. Our guest tonight is Major General Uzi Dayan, for which we thank American Friends of Likud for providing us with this opportunity at such a critical time in our world. If you have any questions about American Friends of Likud, please check in with Aaron Haro, and who's running around here someplace. Major General Dayan was born in 1948 and grew up on, and forgive me, I'm going to have to do Moshav Hayogev in the northern part of Israel. He is the nephew of Moshe Dayan. He spent his 36-year military career as a soldier, officer, and top commander of the IDF's top intelligence and commando units. Major General Dayan commanded troops in the Six-Day War, the 1973 Yom Kippur War, and the Lebanon War, and also served as the IDF Deputy Chief of Staff and as the National Security Advisor to Prime Ministers Ehud Barak and Ariel Sharon. He now works closely with Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Ehud Barak. And I'm just realizing how many wars Israel has had since 1948. When you read it like that, it's painful. A delegation consisting of Dan Diker, Ambassador Dori Gold, Vice Prime Minister Moshe Boogie Ya'alon just returned from meetings at the White House with top administration officials, where they presented and discussed an in-depth study called Israel's Critical Security Needs for a Viable Peace. Major General Dayan will be discussing with us these White House meetings from which he just returned. We have some handouts of this study are available outside on the table, and if you want the link to the full study, you can email me and I'll provide it to you. We thank the Lux Hotel for their continued gracious generosity and support in providing us with this beautiful venue, enabling these important events to continue. Major General Dayan will take questions at the end of his presentation, and at this time, we ask that you kindly turn off your cell phones, pagers, and any other electrical devices. Please welcome Major General Uzi Dayan.
Good evening. It's nice being here, kind of Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. And I told Doris that I'm reading patiently her email in Israel. Almost every day there is a new email from Doris in California, Los Angeles, and it's the first time actually that I see Doris, so thank you very much for having me here and talking about Shevet Achim Gam Yachad and talking about the wars in Israel. Please raise up and have a moment of silence, because it's a very sad day in Israel today. We are, at least the 6 family are waiting tomorrow to have the dear members, the soldiers that were killed, the Air Force soldiers that were killed, that were crashed in Romania. So it's going to be a very sad weekend, and please raise up and have a silent of moment to share this sad moment. Thank you. It's maybe the right way to start talking about national security in Israel by remember that so many people that sacrificed their life and give us the right and the ability to live the way we do. You heard my bio. I will try to describe very briefly the national security challenges of Israel today. I'll do it from a very Israeli point of view. I'm very Israeli, or you can never tell it by my accent, but you can take my word for it. And you heard my bio, and so you know that I know one or two things about national security. And talking about national security today, it's a kind of a story, a tale of two cities, Gaza and Tehran. Gaza is the capital of terrorism. To illustrate it, I think that from 9/11 until 1, there were, how many? Almost no one big or successful terror attack in North America. In that period of time, we experienced in Israel, listen to the number, more than 32,000 terror attacks. And by saying a terror attack, I don't count throwing stones that can kill people. I'm talking about explosion, shooting, mortar shelling, Katyusha rockets, etc. More than 32,000. Once you are under a massive terror attack, you have to fight back. There is no other way. And you have to do it effectively. Fighting terrorism effectively, you need to combine 5 different efforts. One is what we can call diplomatic, international relations, political effort. Another one, maybe the main one, is military effort, but also legal one. There is another economical aspect to it. And finally, something that had become so important in the last year is, let's call it public opinion, media, the image of it. Years ago, we didn't pay attention to our image, what is called in Israel hasbara, kind of apologizing, explaining yourself. We used to say, at least in the military, we used to say, if you don't win, you have to explain now. And we didn't want to explain, say, we do the right thing and that's enough. It seems that it's not enough. And the image of Israel is becoming an integral part of the national security. So, in order to fight terrorism effectively, you need to combine all those 5 fingers to one fist, to a fist, and this is the only way to be effective on fighting terrorism. And fighting terrorism should be the joint interest of every decent person. Why? Because if you don't fight terrorism effectively, you leave the key to any progress, whatever your opinion is. If you don't fight terrorism effectively, you leave the key to any progress in the hands of some terrorists, and they will derail it once they want. And the last year, many times, when I think about it, I have the urge of saying, we have to fight terrorism. Terrorism, it's our joint, it's enemy of every progress. And if you don't help, if you don't join us on fighting terrorism, at least don't bother. I think it's as simple as even Judge Goldstone will understand it one day, that this is our enemy and we have to fight it, and we have to fight it effectively. The other pole, which is pretty far away from Israel, is Tehran. Now, Iran represents today a threefold threat. The first one is that we are a target. We are not a helpless, weak target. Israel is a pretty strong state. But we are very vulnerable, and we are very vulnerable because it's a small state. Once you are a small state, all those ideas of balance of fear, first, second, third strike, etc., doesn't work. You have to deter, and you have to act very quickly, and it's a kind of intolerable threat on Israel. Now, we are not the only one who are under threat, because if Iran will get nuclear, very quickly it will proliferate to terror organizations. It will proliferate to the Hamas and to Hezbollah, maybe to Al-Qaeda. And this is something nobody wants to mess with, the combination of terrorism and the nuclear umbrella behind it. So one of the reasons the United States of America went to Afghanistan, and the second phase was, or phase 2 was Iraq. Nobody messed with Pakistan or even North Korea today, and even with Iran, because nobody likes to clash, to mess with somebody who combines terrorism and nuclear umbrella. And finally, the third threat is a threat on all the free world. If Iran will get nuclear capability, very quickly other countries will look for an equalizer. There are many candidates. Some people say Saudi Arabia, some people say Egypt, some people say other states. I believe that the first country that will go for an equalizer will be Iraq. The more Iraq will be free, strong, independent, they will go for an equalizer. Why? Because we, Israel, we are not an enemy of Iran. We don't have joint border, we don't have conflict of interest. It's Iran chose Israel to be a target. Iraq knows exactly what it means to fight with Iran. And they will try to get an equalizer as quickly as they can. And there are many shortcuts today. And then very quickly, the club, which consists today of what? 8.5 countries. The club will become a mob. And a new situation in which, let's say, 16 countries, nuclear countries, are there, it's unstable by definition. It's not the balance of fear, it's not two powers, etc. And this is a nightmare. And everybody should understand that. So why so far Iran can get away with what they are doing? Because usually politicians don't like binary challenges, binary problems, which mean everything or nothing. And this is binary one, which means the question is not, it's not a crisis to manage. It's not something that you can, as they like in Washington, to kick the can down the street. It's a very strict or sharp question. Are they going to have the nuclear bomb or not? And you have to do something about it. Usually politicians everywhere don't like such challenges. And something has to be done. So on those two cities, Israel, I hope, will continue to get a kind of closure on Gaza, because if we don't do so, it's becoming a growing threat on Israel. Now, terrorism is not an existential threat. The Hamas doesn't threaten the existence of the state Israel. They want to. They are not capable of. But this is a strategic threat, which means they can derail everything. We'll arrive in a moment to direct talks with the Palestinians. As long as Gaza is there, what are we going to talk about? Maybe 3 states for 2 people? So, but some people say it's a Palestinian inner problem. Maybe. But it's our problem if our citizens are under fire. And yesterday, well, the day before, there was the first time then a different rocket was launched from Gaza. By saying a different rocket means it's an imported one. It wasn't produced in Gaza. What does it mean? It means, one, that we can export or import as many rockets as we want, and 2, the range. So there is no other way but to isolate at least Gaza. There is an open discussion in Israel with different views what has to be done about Gaza, and personally I think that it's not enough to isolate Gaza, and Israel will have to, sooner or later, to dismantle the Hamas regime in Gaza. Why so? Because the Hamas is not a part of the solution, is the problem. By nature, you can't change that stuff. So we have to continue at least to isolate Gaza, or if you can call it, to demilitarize it. Iran need another solution. Now, I'm not against being engaged with Iran for a very simple reason. If by the end of the day you need to strike militarily, maybe it's a good idea to show to your own people that you did everything and there is not other choice but to strike militarily. But that you have to prepare it. Now, I didn't get the impression in Washington that Washington is so eager to strike militarily even if it's needed. And maybe I'm wrong. What I know that Israel should continue and prepare a military strike and use it as a last choice, but prepare it. Why so? Because I believe to Ahmadinejad and other people there when they say that they want to destroy Israel. How should I explain it here? Well, the title here, it's the children of the Holocaust survivors. So from the Holocaust till now, I take very seriously when somebody says, I want to destroy and prepare a weapon that can do the job. So Israel has to continue and prepare. We have to be very sensitive. We have to think about our relations with the United States of America, of course. We have to think about the American role here. But by the end of the day, if there is no other choice, we have to strike militarily, not because it's an easy job that we can fulfill, that we can do on our own, but at least we can buy some time. And as you saw when Israel attacked the Osirak reactor, that sometimes buying time is good enough. Maybe this is not the case, but we can at least do what is with our capability to force the outer world, the free world, and to do, or let's say, to do it in a way that other countries won't continue to sit down and do nothing. Because once they have this capability, I don't understand all the people who explain in so many ways why they won't use it. They might use it just because they got the capability. These are the two main challenges. And this is also, in a way, I mean, before striking, of course, we have to go and impose sanctions. I think that sanctions can be very, very effective. But it's not done. And this is the last moment to do it. And it's not enough, if you impose sanctions, you have to go all the way. If you combine money, movement of transportation, especially ships, crude oil, refined products, or oil products that Iran consume much more than they can produce, I think it can be very powerful. And it's high time to do it. This is maybe the background now to what is between us and the Palestinians. Now, I think that the whole policy here is based on two wrong assumptions. One assumption is that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is basically a territorial one. And not only a territorial one, but a territorial one to do with 67. It's wrong. It's not only territorial issue. Territorial issues are important, but it's not the whole story. And to prove it, we pulled out of Lebanon to the last inch. Hezbollah will continue to do its best to chase the Jews all the way to Jerusalem if they can, even now that we are not in Lebanon anymore. We disengaged, we evacuated Gaza with a very high price. And it didn't work. I mean, the Hamas is there. Once the Hamas is there, very quickly the Iranian, it will be another Iranian outpost. And it didn't help. Now, are we going to do the same experiment where? In Judea and Samaria, near Jerusalem, Tel Aviv? Never ever. This is a lesson that should be learned. And the reason is that it's not only territorial issue. Another wrong assumption is that if the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will be settled down in a way, it will solve everything. From, I don't know, ecology, the tension between the Islamic world and the West, and I don't know, even cancer will be solved those days. It doesn't work this way. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is an important issue, especially for us, the Israelis, but this is not the reason why there is such a conflict between the fundamentalism, Islam, and the free Western world. Still, we want very much to solve this conflict. We tried it in the last 20 years. We did our best. I can tell you, I was there. I was in my different capacities. I was in charge of the security committee in all the Israeli negotiations with the Palestinians, with the Syrians, with the Jordanians, with you name it. And we did our best, and it's about time to derive some lessons why it doesn't work. And from my experience, there are more than one lesson, but I want to put my finger on the main one. And the main one was a kind of an approach in Israel and in other places, which who said, you know, that in a nutshell, that peace will bring security. Which means, once you have a peace agreement, there won't be any war. If there are no wars, you got your security. It's wrong. It doesn't work this way. It's the other way around, by the way. If your peace is not based on security, it's not a lasting peace. It gives a lot of temptation to the other side to violate it and to attack you. And all this notion of land for peace doesn't work. Let me tell you something about it. I don't know if it's a funny story, but it's a good story. During the negotiation with Syria in one plantation, I hosted in Israel the finance committee of the Congress here. We went around the Golan Heights. They asked all kind of questions. I showed them everything from Mount Hermon to the Israeli fortification line. And finally, late in the afternoon, we were sitting in a place called Kalat Namrud, which is a crusader fort in the northern part of the Golan Heights. You can see all the Golan Heights, and on your right side, the Hula Valley, the Galilee, and on your left side, the Mount Hermon and Syria. And everybody was very impressed. It was a very good tour. And then one of the committee, a senator, a congressman that I didn't know those days, with a funny small ponytail, asked the permission of the head of the committee, of the American committee, to say, to relate to it, to say something, and he said, go ahead. And then he said, General Dayan, it was very impressive. We understand now all the different views about it, all the possible arrangements, etc., and how much it's going to cost, because that was the finance committee. And he said, but let me represent myself. He said, my name is Nighthorse Campbell. You know Nighthorse Campbell? He was a congressman from Colorado. And he said, and he continued, said, I wish to give you, the Israelis, a small piece of advice from our experience, the Native Americans, and he said, never trade land for peace. So I still remember this piece of advice of Nighthorse Campbell. So it's the other way around. Maybe they knew what they said in, Hashem Ozla Mo Iten, Hashem Yevarech et Amo Bashalom, that the Lord will give strength to His people, Lord will bless His people with peace. First of all, should be security arrangement. Then we can talk about a peace. And the whole Israeli policy should be changed and not be being said that it's a security based on diplomatic arrangement or a peace agreements, etc., but the other way around, which means that the policy should be a policy which is based on security, and then we can talk about having a peace, I hope. Now, if we are talking about security here, I think that the main tool today, and this is what we are doing in the last months, we even established the Security Committee for Israel, which is a public committee, a public council, the Security Council for Israel. In Hebrew, it's because in Israel, once you say Security Council, you think immediately about the Security Council of the UN, which is always against Israel. There is everything there but security. And there we are talking about Security Council for Israel. And the first issue that we choose to bring up is defensible borders. Now, Israel is entitled to defensible borders maybe as any other state. But we have our history. And by the way, it's not only a natural, what you call a natural right, it was recognized, oddly enough, first of all, in 242 resolution, a very problematic resolution, but at least it says there Israel should withdraw to, if I remember right, secured, recognized boundaries, which means it's not the 67 line. I mean, they understood that the 67 line, it's a kind of an unsecured border which will bring a war, because the temptation to attack a country with 11 miles width, which is exactly the distance, if I recall, between JFK and LaGuardia. So there is always a temptation to attack you, and this is what brought the 6-day wars. So they say to secure recognized boundaries. Later on, in 2004, there was the famous letter of President Bush to Prime Minister Sharon. And what was said there, that Israel is entitled to defensible borders, which mean borders that, based on this border, Israel can defend itself. And it's about time to recall which people signed this letter, which means it was agreed on the two parties, including a young senator from New York called Hillary Clinton, including an unknown congressman called Rahm Emanuel. They are all signs that Israel is entitled to defensible borders. So 2 weeks ago, after announcing it in Israel, we went to Washington. We met with the National Security Council there. There were Dori Gold, Dan Diker, and myself. And we met with Dennis Ross and Dan Shapiro, who is at the portfolio of the Middle East. I think it replaced Elliot Abrams. And I said, remember those defensible borders? They say, of course. I say, let's talk about where are they? Where is this line? It can't be the 67 line. It can't be the secure defense line. There is only one place. They say where? I say the Jordan River. Yeah. Now, even if we narrow it to security arguments, because security arguments are not everything. What I'm trying to state here is that if you start by saying what is your security demands, it's a very important red line. I'm not saying that everything is security. There are national issues, there are religious aspects, there are historical aspects, but even if we know it to security aspects, we are entitled to have our defensible borders, and the first aspect of the first explanation to it is the distance. The average distance between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea is, listen, 40 miles. 40. This is not a strategic depth. This is a minimal demand for having to defend yourself against a conventional attack. And then they said, what do you mean by conventional attack? Who is going to attack you? I said, well, first of all, look at our history. I don't know what will happen with Iraq. I don't know what will be the future of Jordan. I hope it will continue, but I don't know. And if we're talking about defensible borders, you have to think about generations. It's not what happened last year. And recall that Iraq took part in all the wars against Israel. I mean, by sending forces from 48, there was even active in 91, when there wasn't a war even, we were just a target. So we need to be there. Some people say, rockets and ballistic missiles means the territories are not important. Wrong. It's the other way around. Because if there is a threat of ballistic missiles or even long-range rockets, you need to deploy, you need enough place to deploy your early warning devices or units, interception batteries. You need some depth. F-16, F-16, even loaded, going very slowly, cross the area, the distance from the Jordan River to Tel Aviv in less than 2.5 minutes. That's the distance. So are we going to intercept it where? In Ramat Gan? And it means that we need the control to control the airspace there. And finally, you remember Bar Ilan speech of Prime Minister Netanyahu. There were two main issues there. One was recognition of a Jewish state. I'll arrive to it in a minute, why it is important. And the other one was Israel agreed to a Palestinian state, or two states for two people, as long as the Palestinian state will be demilitarized. Now, in order to be demilitarized state, we need at least to be deployed on the envelope. There is no other way. The problem with the Hezbollah becomes so powerful not because where the Israeli-Lebanese border is, but because the border between Lebanon and Syria is wide open. The same thing in Gaza. And this is why Gaza should be isolated. If not, it's wide open. And very quickly, this is not demilitarized. So any Palestinian entity that will be there should be demilitarized. And that brings us to the point that the only defensible borders of Israel are the Jordan River and all the Bekaa, the Jordan Bekaa there. I told them, Dennis Ross and Dan Shapiro, said, I don't think that anybody can professionally challenge this statement. And they know that I was right. But then some people there said, you're going backward. I said, what do you mean backward? He said, everybody talk about the 67 line plus swaps, etc. I think maybe that's the defensible borders of the Israeli press, the Israeli media, but it's not the defensible borders of Israel. And I said, you want to go backward? Let's go backward. Remember the last speech of Yitzhak Rabin before he was assassinated. He had his last speech in the Knesset. And what he said there is, I quote, Israel in any circumstances, any arrangement, at any peace agreement, etc., should keep control of the Jordan Bekaa in the widest meaning of the term. Said in Hebrew, to get control, לשלוט על בקעת הירדן, במובן הכי רחב של המילה. Not a very good Hebrew, by the way, but the context, the essence is a very important one. And I told Dennis and said, do you think that Prime Minister Netanyahu will do something which is less than Rabin promised in his last speech in the Knesset? I tell you that because I want to arrive to my last point, and this is the Israeli Hasbara. There was a joke in Israel years ago that we have to nominate a new minister for Hasbara and Leviatanim, Hasbara, Leviatanim is whales. And somebody say, what do you mean by whales? There are not whales in Israel. And somebody else said, there are no Hasbara either. I don't think this is the point. I think that the point is that it's about time that we will be much more clearer and say exactly what we mean. Because if not, the public opinion are getting, and especially the media, the feeling that, everything can go. And somebody here yesterday, the Los Angeles Times, asked me, do you think that the Palestinian will agree to it? I say, I don't know, and I don't care. It's so many years that we try to please the Palestinians, and the more we try to please the Palestinians, there are more demands, and this is not our job. Our job is to build a Jewish democratic state. And let me explain what I mean by being clearer and determined. If you ask a Palestinian, even today, we renew the talks with the Israelis. They have a bunch of demands in order to renew the talks. You don't want to talk, let's not talk about it. I mean, why should we? In the last year, the only leader in the Middle East who tried to do something, to make some gestures, to go forward to meet President Obama vision is Benjamin Netanyahu. What fight from Saudi Arabia did, what Mubarak did for it, what the King of Jordan, not to mention Syria, Iran, Turkey, Erdogan. Nobody. We are the only one who tried to please and ask ourselves all the time, will the Palestinians agree to it? I don't know and I don't care. But if you ask a Palestinian today about direct talks and say, what is the goal of you, the Palestinian people? You know what he will say? He will say a Palestinian state, 67 line, and Jerusalem as the capital of the state. That's what he will say. Every kid can understand that. If you ask an Israeli, what is your goals? What he will say, as an Israeli, he will say, first of all, it's complicated, no? That's kind of the Israeli slogan. Everything is complicated. Not that complicated, actually. What Israel should say is, we are building the Jewish democratic state of Israel for the Israelis, for the Jewish people, and what we want is everything starts with J. Not only Jewish state, but Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It's our capital, don't even think about it. Two, defensible borders. We're entitled to it, we need it. This is our borders, the Jordan River, period. And three, I promise you to return to a Jewish state. We want the Palestinians to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Why so? Why that important that Abu Mazen will recognize me as a Jewish state? I can be a Jewish state without his recognition. But he doesn't do it because he understands that once you say Jewish state means bye-bye right of return. That's the point. And this should be the Israeli point, because we are there. It's not that we have to negotiate what we get. We have to negotiate maybe if we give something. We are there. So why to compromise? Just say, this is a Jewish democratic state, Jerusalem is the capital, and this is why I say borders. Borders is everything now. Not because it's more important than Jerusalem, but this is actually the envelope which will protect Jerusalem. If we'll continue to say every day, Jerusalem, 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 some people might understand that we mean only Jerusalem. So defensible borders should be today the main issue, and the issue that we should push to the front of such direct negotiation. And finally, Israelis not only say it's complicated, but also ask all the time, Ma yaya sof? What will be the end of it? So, from what I see today, the Palestinians don't have so many cards. The only card that Abu Mazen can play is what the United States of America position will be, and pay attention that after 1.5 years we returned more or less to the same point, to the same square. It's true that we paid for it by freezing the Israeli settlements, and nobody in Israel really liked it. But from the Palestinian point of view, it's not such a big achievement because nothing happened, and I hope that in September everything will be renewed, and then we have to have our priorities. And the main priority of Israel should be building Jerusalem and the Jordan background. That should be in first priority, not because it's more important than Bet El or Dumim, but because it's better to give that priority right now. And from their point of view, Israel is strong enough to continue in building Israel. So let's say that to the question what will be the end of it, I think that if we'll be determined enough and if we'll be consistent and we'll know to live up and not to give up and continue to build the state of Israel and to defend ourselves, by the time there is a potential to a silent alliance to raise. And this alliance will consist of people, nations, leaders in the Middle East and actually in the wider region that understand that we have one common enemy. And the one common enemy is the armed fundamental Islamic militias. This is an enemy of Egypt not less than Israel. This is an enemy of King Abdullah in Jordan not less than an enemy of Israel. And they know that. This silent alliance will understand that we have one common threat on us, and this is the nuclear Shiite Iran. A nuclear Iran is a threat on Kuwait or on Saudi Arabia not less than on Israel. And I emphasize a silent alliance. Nobody will talk about it, but people will start to understand, it will take some time, that it's not Israel and the Arab world. It's not even Jews and Muslims. It's all the decent people, countries, organizations who understand that we have one common enemy and we have a common threat on us. And if by the time there will be a Palestinian leader that will be willing, together with the Arab countries, to go to an historic compromise, which means that Israel will get everything that we need to defend ourselves. Israel will continue to build Israel in the borders that I tell. Israel doesn't want to rule the Palestinians. It's not good for us. But the Palestinians will have to understand that this is what they can get. If you ask me, by the time, the main address will be Jordan, which means the Palestinians will get their autonomy in the places where they are. We don't want to be inside Nablus, we don't want to be inside Ramallah. And the Palestinians, if they want to be connected to any entity, to any state, it will be the Jordan, or in one sentence, a Palestinian state, and Amman is its capital.
Right, that's right.
The most important tool, and this is the last word here, is years ago when I was the National Security Advisor, I was asking Jerusalem in a kind of a conference. There were some people there, and we were asked, what is the most important or precious strategic asset of Israel? Some people say the Merkava, the IDF, Merkava, I don't know, Mark 4 or 5, F-16, the F-35 wasn't mentioned those days. And this was one opinion. Somebody else said, it's what we can talk about it, if you understand, etc. And I said, and I stick to it, that the most important, or the strategic asset of Israel, is the cohesion of the Jewish people. I don't mean, and I say Jewish people, it's not only the Israeli society, which is very important, it's not only the relation between Israel and the Jewish communities, it's not only the relation between the Jewish communities and the Israeli communities, which are always separate for a peculiar reason. It's the cohesion of all the tribes of the Jewish people. And so, let me finish by telling you that just thank you for everything that you are doing. Everything that you are doing for Jewish education, everything that you are doing for your own community here, everything that you are doing to support Israel, coming to Israel, whatever, it's not only a contribution to the strength of the state of Israel, and it is, it's actually a direct and pure contribution to this strategic asset of all of us, and this is the cohesion of the Jewish people. Hebrew is a short language, so just 2 words to all of you. Toda Rabba. Thank you very much.
To what you were talking about, because obviously, I know he took Bibi all the way to the limousine before he went home, but does he really understand what it's all about? And thirdly, what's the aspect of the Palestinian in Israel to the mishvah of our prophets?
Okay. That's it? I mean, you pose three questions. I want to remember more questions at a time. You want to accumulate it?
I'll say it again. Why did we not finish the job in Gaza.
No, I do remember. I won't remember if other people will bring more and more questions. You know, I have 3 children, and when they don't want to sleep, they say only one question, and it's usually something like what life is about. Shall I take it, those 3? Okay. One was about the Hamas. There are 2 different approaches to it in the Israeli cabinet. That's the truth. One say we have to isolate Gaza and then actually open Gaza to Egypt. Hopefully they will adopt this baby or this serpent. They won't do it because you know that the Palestinians or the Arab, the one Palestinians in Gaza, you know which nationality, which citizenship they got? Egyptian? Wrong. They didn't have any citizenship. The Arabs, the Palestinians in Jordan or in Judah and Samaria were Jordanians. Second degree Jordanians, but still Jordanians. In Gaza, they didn't even issue them a citizenship. They had a laissez-passer. They didn't have any. When we negotiate with when Begin negotiated with the Egyptians the peace agreement, and when they arrived to Rafah, Begin offered to the Egyptians that all Rafah, the line, the British line, was cutting Rafah into 2 halves. And he offered them to get Rafah on the Egyptian side and didn't even ask for a swap or for any compensation. And they said, no, this is the line and we don't care. So they won't take it. But this is one approach. The other one, which you will be more satisfied with it, and this is my approach, say that we have to deal with Gaza as an hostile entity. And so we can isolate it, but we have to make sure that no more armament, etc., goes to Gaza, and in the first opportunity to dismantle the Hamas regime. People who don't like it, and actually we could have done it in costly operation, but this wasn't one of the goals of the operation. If you ask me why, it's because people are getting more and more sophisticated and they don't like to set up goals which they don't know if they will be able to achieve. It's you know, as a Stanford graduate, the equation that I learned in Stanford was that H is equal to E over R, which means happiness is the ratio between your expectation and the results. If you want to be happy, you have to come up with very good results or to lower your expectation. And that's what was done, I think, what was done there. Other people say, this is not something that this is not a solution, because if the Hamas won't be there, what will be there? And I don't remember during World War II that everybody was saying, well, if we'll get down, let's say not even the German, the Italian, Duccio Mussolini, who will be there? Nobody thought about Mussolini those days. I don't know who will be there, but we can at least set the price and say, if you shoot at us, if you are an enemy of the state of Israel, you won't be in power there. What will be there? Somebody else. So this is for the first one. The second one, you ask whether, etc., blah, blah, Benjamin Netanyahu understand it. The answer is yes. That was a short one, isn't it? Yeah. And the third? Okay, I'm sorry, what a mistake. Does he understand it? I don't know. I think, personally, after the last meeting, and I was in Washington, what I can say in Washington is that not a change of policy, but at least people are starting to think, or people are saying, it doesn't work this way, or it doesn't work the way we hoped. It's not yet a fully understanding that we were wrong and we have to do it, and we have to change the policy, but at least people understand, one, it's not that simple, and it's not enough to tell the Israelis we want that and that and that, and two, that it doesn't work the way we wanted. In other words, there is a dilemma of every American president. You can come up with nice vision, etc., but finally you have to decide whether you leave the people in the region to serve their own issue, because you can't realize the vision if politically it doesn't work between the parties. If you realize so, you have two alternatives. One is to leave it to the parties there and not go to proximity talks, because proximity talks is we talk with Washington and the Palestinians talk with Washington. We don't talk to each other. We negotiate, every party negotiates with the Americans. So one possibility, one alternative is to leave it to the people in the area, the people who are the parties of this conflict, to solve it and to facilitate it, to help if it works, etc., etc. Another possibility is to sit in the driver's seat. It's very hard to take such a decision. If you ask me, the first alternative is the only one who can work. Two, Washington today understands that it doesn't work, but still didn't decide it, whether to leave it to the parties or to sit in the driver's seat. The third one was?
The Palestinians inside Israel.
Yeah. First of all, some facts or data in a nutshell. The Palestinians or the Arab minorities in Israel is a big one. It's actually almost 20%, but it hasn't been changed from 48 till now. The same percentage, for different reasons. Wars, immigration, aliyah, more than 1 million people from Russia, etc. Still, it's a big challenge. Now, the 20% are not 20% as a block. It's not homogeneous. 3.5% are actually Arabs who live in East Jerusalem. They are not Israeli citizens. They are Israeli residents because they live in Jerusalem. They don't vote, for example. 2.1% are Arabs in Israel who are Christians. Their rate birth is lower than the Jews in Israel, and their education level is higher than the Jews in Israel. This is the strongest correlation on earth. Reverse correlation between the education of the mother, not the father, pay attention, all the males, and the number of kids. A third group is the Israeli Druze. The Druze is 1.6%, and they are actually serving the IDF in a higher percentage than the Jews in Israel. So what I'm trying to say here, it's not a 20% block. Two, by the year 2025, this percentage, if we sit down and do nothing, will be 23-24%. By the year 2050, again, if we do nothing, this percentage will be, I mean no immigration, no wars, nothing, it will be almost 33%. Which means, and I'm talking now about the 20% as a block, it means that Israel should adopt a new policy toward the minorities in Israel. I think this is something Israel can do, a democracy can defend itself, it's something within our capability. We need a policy, we need not to encourage minorities to expand more and more. For example, the Bedouins in the Negev, which are part of the 14% after I took off the 3.5, 2.1, 1.6, etc., they multiply themselves every 12 years. This is it's a small community, but still the community on earth that have the highest birth rate on our planet, and this is because we allowed it with different laws and life and insurance and marry more than 12 women, etc., etc. So we need to adopt a new policy, but it's in our hand, and from my point of view, a strong democracy can cope with it.
What would that policy be?
Excuse me?
What would the policy be?
The policy will be giving the right education, make people go to work, don't pay for having more kids, not to the Bedouins, not to the Arabs, and not to the ultra-Orthodox. Israel today pay a lot of money for having more and more kids. You can compare just the people who live here in LA or in New York with the Israeli Haredi, with the Israeli Orthodox, and you will find very quickly that here the number of children are much lower and the people who are working are much higher.
Okay. What's life about?
What life?
One question, 3 parts. On Iran, first of all, can Israel do the job that's necessary to be done? Secondly, why not attack? Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
No, I will answer this question. It's a good one.
Okay.
Which means I have a good answer.
So why not try and attack the regime itself?
Why?
Why not try and attack the regime and eliminate the regime rather than a military strike on the facilities? And lastly, what is the impact of Turkey's change on that Iranian conflict, on the consideration of Iran?
Okay. I'll be short here, and thank you. First of all, can Israel, are we capable of preventing Iran from achieving nuclear capability? The answer is an Israeli answer, is no and yes. No, which means we can't just by attacking Iran, by striking Iran, promise to assure that Iran won't get a nuclear capability. But, to the second part, I don't exclude the regime. When I say striking militarily, there are different targets. Here I don't want to get into details, but it's not only the nuclear facilities, etc. There is the crude oil there is the regime, etc. Israel we can't just on our own to prevent Iran from achieving nuclear capability, but let's be very sensitive in this answer. We can pick the right time and the right targets and the right preparation or coordinating with some good friends of us in order that once we strike, the result will be that the outer world won't continue to sit down and do nothing. This is, and we can buy time, and sometimes buying time is important, but to be accurate, if we do it in the right way, this is one of the reasons that we should keep the best relation that we can with Washington, and we have to be very responsible and sensitive here, because once Israel strike, nobody will believe to any spokesman in Washington that we didn't know about it a thing. Right? Right. So we have to be very sensitive and responsible here, and do it under certain circumstances, in the right time, in the right way. The product, the results will be that the West will say, okay, we can't allow it to deteriorate, and we have to do something about it. So this is a pretty strong weapon.
And Turkey?
Huh? Turkey is an accident. I mean, we don't like it. It was a surprise, first of all, to most experts in Israel. We knew about the Islamic movements, etc., but Erdogan, it's bad news, because Turkey can be a very important strategic partner in the Middle East for a very simple reason. If you have a bitter enemy, everything which is on the other side of it is a good friend. For example, India near Iran, and Turkey also can serve as a bridge to Europe, but it doesn't work, and there is nothing we can do about it. I think that Israel should concentrate on focusing on attacking Erdogan personally. It does represent some of the Turkish views, but it doesn't represent the Turkish army, and it doesn't represent, if you ask me, the real Turkish interests and values. The problem is that if Erdogan will continue the way he behaves, very quickly, in a couple of years, Turkey will become Iran number 2. And talking about being in Washington, the point that I raised there was, do you know how many nuclear warheads are stationed in Turkey? More or less the number of nuclear devices in all Europe. And Turkey is a member of NATO. And as a member of NATO, in a very good location, and near to CENTCOM and EUCOM, and on the way to Iran on one hand, north to Syria, etc., etc. So Turkey could have been a strategic ally, and I think that NATO and Washington should act very quickly, because somebody like Erdogan can be a very big embarrass, and can embarrass Washington and NATO very, very much, taking into account that nuclear weapons are stationed in Turkey.
My question to you, General Dayan, why didn't Israel ever suggested that Saudi Arabia should put a piece of property, Jordan should put a piece of property, Syria and Iraq, and make space for the Palestinians? At least the people in the world, they might be laughing, but at least you submitted some suggestions.
No, I'll tell you, I was asked this question many times, and some people said, this is the real peace plan. A piece of Saudi Arabia, a piece of Syria, and the answer is that they don't want to. It's like you go you're walking on the street with your family and somebody jump on you and say, you know, our son need a donor, a liver donor, and we choose you to be the donor. They don't want to. I mean, I think it's a good idea. It's good for Israel. It's good maybe for everybody, but they don't know about it.
But if you talk about it long enough and repeat long enough, the newspapers, one or the other, will start to analyze it and bring it to the world. And all of a sudden, you will have a lot of people that will say, it's not if you really want peace, it's not a bad idea. The brothers should be the first one that they have to give up on something. But my other question is to you. My other question is to you, is Lebanon. There is a massive structure of military structures. You know it, probably. They say 20,000, 30,000 of missiles there and so forth. There were about 4 weeks ago, there was some tension between Israel and Lebanon. We saw what happened in 2006. How did Israel is going to cope with Lebanon, and what kind of pressure that Israel put on Syria, that they should be afraid to support this kind of entity?
Let's concentrate on your second question, okay? Because if I'll repeat too many times the idea that we have to take a piece of Saudi Arabia, a piece of Jordan, a piece and so on, people won't take it seriously, and by the time I will lose my reputation. So it's a good idea, but they don't want to. I mean, they say, it's our state, tomorrow you will come up with a new idea that there is another tribe somewhere and let's give him another piece of land, etc., etc. For Israel, it's a good idea. Lebanon, the point is that, pay attention to it, Israel is not it's a small country and a very dynamic society, etc. In order to go to a war in Israel, you need that most Israelis will feel something which is enough. There is no other choice. Why so? Let's take Lebanon for example. It's pretty calm there. Hezbollah building and collecting more and more rockets, etc. It's true. We know that. But if we go and attack Lebanon tomorrow morning, after a couple of days, everybody in the northern part of Israel will be sitting, underground, everybody under fire, people will get hurt and killed. And then immediately the citizen of the Galilee, citizen of Israel, will ask how it's all started. In another word, you need a good trigger. Let me tell you an inside story from Washington. When I was National Security Advisor, I once met with some important lady who was the National Security Advisor here. And I said, what is the target, what is the trigger to attack Iraq? What will be the goal, the exact goal? Is it the regime? Is it terrorism, etc.? And what will be the trigger? And she said, what do you mean by trigger? I said, after 1, 2, 5 years, people will ask how it all started. Was it the right target? Why Iraq? Why not another place, etc.? And she said, it was an amazing answer. She said, we don't need a trigger. The president already decided. And she said, it will be a short war. After 1, 2, maybe 3 years we'll be out there. And I said, come on, you know what you mean by changing regime in Iraq, etc.? Do you really think that it will take 2 years? They really believe that. So we need not only a goal and not only a good reason, we need a trigger here. And the only trigger that might come one day is if the Hezbollah will attack Israel. And then you will say, I told you so, but there is no way to do it before the people who are in the country understand that there is no other choice. That's the truth about war. Especially that such war, I don't know, in the last war there were 164 people were killed. So everybody say, well, is it a price to pay because 2 soldiers were kidnapped? And if only 2 citizens, Israeli citizens, were kidnapped. But the atmosphere and what people felt in Israel, it's enough is enough. It take it for is the same reason why Cast Lead operation in Gaza, it took us 8 years or 7 years. I thought that we should have done it much sooner, much earlier than that. But it was only the people in Sderot. It's differently if it's the people in the center of the country. It's a sad answer, but it's a true one. I mean, you should do it once. Enough is enough. And then, I agree with what was asked or remarked earlier, then you should win it all. I mean, you have to go all the way. Because once you pay the price, once you pay, they will blame you anyway. And Goldstone, there will be another Goldstone anyway. So at least go all the way. When I was a commander in my unit, I always told cynically, basically to the soldiers, they say, in a war, unlike in sport, you have to win, not to participate.
Will Syria sit on the side? Will be quiet? Because you have plenty of problems. You have problems with Syria. If the Syrians are instigated.
It's okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
Is there any answer for you, Syrians?
I didn't understand the question, and look, there is something very good that we are losing the people. Make it shorter. No, I mean it. I mean, the people who are asking questions are very fond of the question. The people who are sitting are not always that fond about it. So just make it short, and I'll try to give a short answer.
I mean, the Syrians are sitting 11. They are pulling the strings.
Mm-hmm.
And there is the Nasrallah sitting there with a massive armament there. Yes. Is Syria the one that's going to be hit, or is Syria the one to be taken care of?
Israel said more than once that if we'll be attacked from Lebanon, we know that it's not only the state of Lebanon, but it's also sponsored by the Syrians. So, as I said, if there will be another war, we have to go all the way, and Syria will have to pay the price too.
First, I'd like to say that it's nice to hear voices like yours. I think it's nice to hear voices like yours coming from the Israeli government as we live in Speak louder! What I really want to ask you is talking about Hasbara, talking about the world, the way Israel is perceived by the rest of the world. And it wasn't that far long ago, 1967, when Israel occupied all this territory. And for a long time they were there, and the world practically saluted Israel. I mean, there was no real objection, the opposite. The Americans didn't even understand why we want to give it up so fast. I'm asking you, as I know you as a person that been talking about social issues in Israel. I heard you speak many times about the social structure and what's happening in Israel. What would have happened in the last 40 years that Israel has lost so much of its respect as the underdog or as a country that brought so much good to the world? All of a sudden we are perceived as a... This is one thing I want to ask you. The other thing, you're talking about the Jordan River, which is, it makes sense strategically, defensible border, but still, how are you going to treat the demographic problem in Israel? On one hand, you're counting the 1.5% of the different minorities in Israel. So I'm asking, what about the demographic, how do you going to solve it? And
Please sit down. Not you. People that's going to be my last answer, and I apologize, but I will stay here as long as anybody wants to talk to anybody. We won't have more than that question because we are losing the people here. I'm expert about it. Please sit down. I'll talk to you and answer any question. I have to plan to catch tomorrow morning. Till that, I'm here. Okay. I'll answer this question in a kind of an indirect way. I told you that I was graduated, I had my second degree here at Stanford University. I had a very good teacher, a very good professor, both in Jerusalem University and after that here at Stanford University. His name is Johnny Uman. Professor Johnny Uman was one of the Israeli Nobel Prize winner in mathematics. Not in mathematics, it's in economy. And let's try this side. Huh? And there is no Nobel Prize in mathematics, you know. Some people say because Alfred Nobel wanted, he said, I want only rational, solid issues. Mathematics is, you know, figures, numbers, is not something practical. And another view was that his wife ran away with a mathematician. So Johnny Uman finally got his Nobel Prize on what is called Kalkala Mathematik, mathematical economy. It's another word to say game theory. And let me tell you a paradox that he taught me years ago and connected to that question about other issues. Because I'm the founder, the president of the World Conference with the title that education is not less important than mathematics, than security. The paradox goes this way. Don't be worried, don't get afraid. It's game theory, but everybody can understand that. And it has something to do with what we do in the Middle East. The paradox says, if two rational players, rational is it has a mathematical definition, but rational is what we understand somebody who prefer more than less, who can evaluate everything, he can choose after evaluating what he wants, and he is satisfied with his decision if they were done rationally. Two rational players meet, and somebody came and said, I have an offer to you. I give you $1 million, but you have to agree how you are going to divide $1 million between you two.
Stand behind the podium.
Sorry. So, and if you don't agree, you get nothing. So, the first player, who is very rational, very nice guy, is an Israeli, of course. What he will say, half and half, no? Sounds fair, rational, balanced, whatever. The other guy say, I'm supposed to be rational, but I don't give a damn about rationality. I am a crazy guy, and I want to get $900,000, not 1 cent less than that. And if you don't want, it's your problem. The rational guy doesn't like it, but he's rational, no? So he say, what, I'm going to go home without a penny because this crazy guy, this Majnun guy, doesn't care about rationality, so I'm going to lose $100,000. And I believe, I know that he is crazy. Remember, we have to please him, etc. Because he doesn't give a damn. He's not rational. What I can do? Once you agree to it, you are doomed. They will blackmail you to the last dollar, to the last cent. Because a rational player will always say, okay, he's crazy, but I'm rational, being rational. And we're talking about one shot here. What is the paradox? Why it's a paradox? The paradox is that the rational player is what is called in Israel friar, is sucker. He's rational, but the result is that he is not only no rational, he's a sucker. Everybody can screw him once he wants. The irrational one is a mega rational player, because playing the crazy guy got him whatever he wants. So who is rational or who is not rational? Now let's go deeper to it. What strategy should the friar, the sucker, adopt in order not to lose money? The answer is that he should be also irrational and go and say, okay, you don't want half and half? I don't care, I want a 900,000, and if you don't want, go on. But in order to do it, he has to convince the other guy that he is serious. What should he do in order to be serious enough? You know? He has to convince himself that this is his red line. Which means, only if he is convinced, the other guy, if he is rational, will say, well, it didn't work because this guy is serious about it. And he's serious about it because he believes in it. So it means that being rational here goes down to the emunah, to the basic belief in what you are representing, what is your lines. But you have to be sincere about it. You have to believe in it. And believing is not a rational decision. Actually, no, I mean it. For example, why are you rational? Somebody say, I'm rational. The choosing being irrational, it's irrational decision, which means it comes from something which is deeper than rationality. It's something with its value, emunah for other people, whatever. It's something you believe in it, which means that in order to play in this play and be rational, or not to be screwed, you have first of all to believe in something, to have your own lines. What is even nicer here, that talking about these two players, who got the $1 million today? We got it. Which means it's in our hand. It's not somebody coming and offer us the state Eretz Israel and say, let's play. It's in our hand. So it's not that we are not rational enough, but we are playing, we are talking about something which is in our hand. That's what I said earlier. It's not something you have to get for somebody. It's yours. So who is rational, who is not rational? It goes down, talking about education, etc., that in order to defend your life, in order to build a Jewish democratic state for your children and grandchildren and for generation, for the Jewish people, the basic issue is to believe in what is yours, what belongs to you, for different reasons. Nice, isn't it?
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you very much.